Hey guys, I'm back again. It's Eileen. Today's Monday, 30, I think. Let me check for a second. Yes, 13th of September 2021, and it is 2 o'clock in the afternoon over here. And I decided it is time for me to finally kind of do a witchy check-in where I have all my kit in order again. So the most important part of this is actually the machine recording this whole thing here. I actually did get my phone back from the south of France, where I'd forgotten it and lost it, and in a sort of a brain fart moment, completely just walked away from the place where I left it. And so I want to tell you about this and how I got it back and all the rest of it. So this is going to be a witchy check-in with a couple more bits and things and details that I've got here. And hopefully it'll be entertaining in one way or another. Okay? So the thing, what I've noticed most of all is I only just, and I got my phone back last Thursday, so that's 5 days ago, okay? I only just got around to checking my photos and videos that I recorded and took during my holiday before forgetting my phone, leaving it, in this little chapel in the middle of nowhere. And I realized as I was looking at those things again, and I kind of knew this, I kind of had this figured out already, that these photos especially, and the video stuff that I'm going to share or am already sharing with you guys on my channel, they're this important to me. It is like I have a little piece of my actual physical life restored to me, brought back to me, because I got my phone back. And everything's connected in a way. So it's really cool. I am really happy to be able to say this, that I actually got my stuff back. I kind of had the realization about this church-like little chapel church building in the south of France, where I filmed a couple of little videos that I will be uploading probably later this week, where there's carved out tombs sitting around the church. Probably I realized they have built or rebuilt the chapel on top of the location where the tombs are, although you couldn't get inside the chapel at the point where we're visiting it because it was closed. I don't think there is actually, I should research this at some point or other, there's actually any of those typical types of tombs, carved out tombs, hollowed out in the rock kind of tombs, inside the building. It's only on the outside. So it's like it's grown together for some reason. This piece is like symbolic for me for the whole sort of a new investigation that we did during our holiday in that area. And it's a place where I lived when I was a teenager, 16, 17 years old. And at the time, I was very fond of that area. I have a very strangely different, somehow, relationship with the area where I used to live when I was between 13 and 16, or 15 it was, I think, and from 15 to 18, which was in this place. They're two parts of France. They're very different from each other. And I suppose there's, what can you say? There's things that you were attracted to at the time. The atmosphere was really different. My own vibe of life was really different during those times. Looking back at it like this and going, over this in my mind a bit more, I realized that it had to do, other than, planetary changes and things like that, which happen all the time, which can cause changes in mood over a period of a couple of years for everybody. You know, it's the same for everybody. Other than that, I think I was discovering a lot of things when I was in the first set of years, in the first couple of years, which was in the northeast of France, where you have a sort of a cultural frontier between France and Germany in that location. So that's quite noticeable in people's dialect, in the way they talk, also in French. It's a hilly kind of it's a place where I used to live in that time period, so 12 to 15. It was, or 13 to 15, I should say, because it was only 2 years really. It was a period, where I was really starting to have, hormones and be having interactions with the other gender and things like that. And I remember having a lot of energy. Also, it was a really nice place in terms of the school we were at, the people. It used to be difficult. It was difficult in the beginning, but then we sort of became friends all of a sudden. It was really strange and special. And we went to school in the Rhine Valley, I should say, which is like a flat area in the middle between German higher hills, 1,000 meters and more, and the French Vosges hills or mountains, depending on how you want to look at that. So that's one phase of my life where I was really, I suppose I had a high level of energy a lot of the time. I was interested in a lot of new things. I was interested in science. I was reading a lot, and there were people at school that I could actually talk to about those things. And I still didn't have a normal teenager life, I think, because I was a foreigner, and I didn't. I had no possibility of staying there ever. Just like everywhere else where I used to live. Before I was actually married to my husband, I suppose, there was a lot of chaos in my life, and we just moved around from place to place quite a few times. So that was just still, it was one of the closest times I actually got to being a normal kid, with other normal females around, and talking and chatting a lot. And I was very social, and I had a lot of fun in those days. And we had a lot of fun. We were laughing and, poking fun at each other the whole time. So that was cool. The other period, which was after that, so from 15 to 18, where I lived in the south of France, this is the place that I'm talking about that we revisited during our summer holiday just a month ago. It was very different. I still had some personal energy left. I was still very much into reading and, doing all sorts of relatively unorthodox academic kinds of things, because I grew up fairly isolated with a mother who was interested in all sorts of things, really, and had opinions certainly about lots of things. I suppose I got into, all sorts of territory still. But my life in the south of France was more what it tended to be afterwards. And as I grew up, there was like a shift in growing up, like a sudden oops, going forward in terms of personal development. And I felt like if I had the choice at 15, I would have stayed in the north, certainly, and stuck around with my friends, and generally, tried to have a life over there. As it was, I didn't have a choice. My mother decided that we were going to go to the south because the climate, and she would, hopefully feel better over there, which never really worked. So I just had to tag along. I had no choice in coming along there. And in the first couple of months there, I remembered that people were poking fun at me because I had the wrong accent, which is a huge deal in France. If you are from somewhere else, not necessarily from over the hill, from over just, a couple of kilometers away, but if you're really from a different region within the country of France, they will think you're a complete weirdo and poke fun at you anyway. So I sort of started doing a bit more growing up over there and inside, certainly. And I think I maybe even developed some personality traits that were inside me all the time, where I adapted, leastways, to living with my mother in that circumstance in this tiny village in Provence, where I am always struck each time I visit this place. By now, it will be in the summertime, because that's the time that's the period when we actually have the time to drive that far and to take 3 days to just get there, because it's that far, really. You could do it quicker. And then again, maybe not, because we were on this summer also, we were on the highway, on the autoroute, and driving at less than 4 miles an hour, or what am I saying, 2 miles an hour, because traffic was a nightmare. So I don't know if there's that much faster way to get there, really, except by plane, then yes. So I suppose I started growing up in different ways. My mother was a huge influence in my life, and she had to deal with a lot of things and troubles in her own situation. She was even more isolated than I was, socially and mentally, and that wasn't good for her. And she had lots of troubles and things that we didn't really even know how to begin to talk about properly. And she wasn't really good at processing emotional things that were bothering her at all. So things just stayed the way they were for her always. That's something I had a really hard time dealing with this. And the basis of what happened to me, I think, at that time, was that I sort of withdrew completely into some sort of a dream world, some sort of a fantasy world, which is what I hear a lot of people, do themselves, either thanks to Harry Potter, or in my case, it was more of a Tolkien, Lord of the Rings type of a vibe that I was comfortable with, so on. So the countryside over there, which is a set of, hills and villages and small towns, depending on where you are, because there's a lot of variation between the areas and from one valley to the next, really. There's a lot of variation in plant life, in what things look like, what the color of the earth is like, is very, can be quite different. There's areas which are really beautiful because of the red earth, which I've, shown occasionally before already. I'm looking around, I don't think I've got any. It's like a red clay, like a ochre red color. We've revisited that area as well this time around, because I just had to, always get back there. And besides, I wanted, for my collection of dirt samples that I have been building up, I'm still building my dirt collection, because I have 3 more types of dirt that I'm adding to my collection sometime soon, from around here, that is. I also wanted a sample of the red iron-rich ochre dirt that sits in that area. And this is just a specific band of, an area where the ochre comes from, where you can see that also in the landscape. And that's gorgeous and beautiful. There's herbs. We did a lot of herb picking, sorry, in this summer. So that was quite successful. I had like this little church that I visited with those tombs around it. That was a new place. And what I did during the summer, which I wanted, what I decided beforehand, even planned sort of to go and do for myself, was to sort of reclaim this land. Okay, so I think I realized at the time, or somewhere during the past couple of years, I realized that the sort of a memory set that I have of this whole area at this time now in my life was heavily influenced and determined and molded by my mother's situation back in the day. And there was a longer period of time that wasn't just those 3 years. It was because afterwards she stayed in that same house for a couple more years as I went to while I went to Amsterdam to study at the university there. And then after that, she moved to a different house on the other side of the hill range, south from there, which is another example of ending up in a different type of circumstance. This location we did revisit also this summer on a very rainy day, and we had a couple of things that we needed for a tent and things. And we passed through there and we had a cup of tea and a pie because it was raining cats and dogs the whole day. And we were, due for a break. But it just, my whole memory set of the whole of those years sort of falls into chunks. And a lot of it belonged really, like I was saying, to my mother, much more than to me. And I suppose by now, I'm 55, okay? I can actually tell the difference in, if I choose to, because I still have to choose to do that, I can tell the difference in the emotional quality of memories. That's important to me right here. Between the bits that really belong with my mum or with my response to the situation with her as long as she was alive, which tended to be the same kind of thing always. It's a fairly narrow wavelength, which was where I was allowed to sit in my life, I didn't have any room to wriggle. I didn't have any room to grow or change or develop new skills, because that was just all very scary and dangerous. Part of this was also my personal nature, my response, my reaction to the situation. I wasn't at ease enough. I wasn't relaxed enough to let myself grow either. Then again, you would want your mother to be able to understand you and help you if you need help. And that wasn't the case. So there's all this type of analysis going on around this whole story. And what I was motivated to go and do now, going back into that area, was instead of wallowing in all the old misery, I wanted to reclaim this whole area and find spots and types of atmosphere and colors and vibrations and goodness that belongs to me now. So kind of a enlightened selfishness kind of an idea, if you get what I mean, if that makes sense, So that actually really worked. And as proof of those moments and those moves, really, and those choices, I took photos. And those photos were in my phone, right? So what did I go and do? And here I am, going like, okay, so there's another astrological sort of a congruency coming towards me here. At one point, since I am in an endless struggle for my own personal freedom versus my own personal loyalty to my mother, even now, she's been dead for more than a quarter of a century, I'm still loyal to all those ideas, because it's not that easy to free yourself from those types of restrictions. I do not need to tell you this, right? As proof of my allegiance to my mother, I managed to forget my phone in another little chapel that we had decided to go and visit because there was an interesting sculpture there, which I will maybe also be able to tell you about. And then it took another 4 weeks for the phone to get back to me. Because I forgot it in this location, not in some coffee house somewhere where it would have been nicked like within 10 seconds, or on the beach, or in a hotel, or where you could just you have really very little hope of ever seeing your stuff again. No, instead of that, I forgot my phone in another little very remote chapel where there were 2 other visitors at the same time we were there, and probably nobody else came during the whole of the afternoon. So my husband suggested I ring up the municipal county house of the village that the chapel belongs to, which is like way out in the sticks, in between the fields. The next morning, after I discovered, so the Sunday I forgot the phone, we traveled on with our tent and our belongings and our rental car to our next location in the Alps, where we were supposed to be staying for the rest of the holiday, which we did, and we couldn't just drive back. It was not really an option to go and drive back all that way and to have wasted really our opportunity also to be in the Alps at all. So that wasn't really an option. Instead of that, we decided to ring them up the next day, which was a Monday, and I explained my situation to them, and they were very helpful and very supportive, and they rang us back the next day after that, so Tuesday, saying that actually found my phone. So I was ecstatic, of course. After that, I had no worries about it, theoretically, because I was sort of confident, okay, so it hasn't disappeared. My phone is around there somewhere. But I didn't get out of it that easily. Of course, I may be Mrs. Lucky for all the world, really, But I didn't get away with it that easily. The person who'd found the phone, who was like the vicar or pastor, I don't know what they're called, Catholic priest, I suppose somebody who was really a caretaker of the whole of the area, of those religious buildings in that area. They managed to not write my address, which I'd given to them via email, after having been given their data, through the municipal house that we've contacted. I gave them my full address, but they managed to forget putting in my street name and, my house number. So it took another 3 whole weeks, which dragged by for me, and I wasn't really feeling very fit. I'd been having a bit of I'm going to move you around slightly, because if I sit like this, you get this reflection from the sun outside, so in my glasses. So you're there. It was it dragged by. It felt like it took way longer than it should, and each day I'm of the obsessive compulsive kind myself, so the whole thing just went on forever. And in the end, it took another 10 or 11 days or so for the phone to get back to them with the incomplete address. They did do a special post thing. I don't know what that's called. Recommended post, I think that's called, where you pay a bit extra and they take extra care of your package, You're like that. In the end, it got back to them, and they sent it on again the same day with the complete address this time. And then it only took 2 days to get from them to my doormat here. And so I was completely over the moon. But I only now realize why this phone is so important to me, because of all those photographs, all those memories. There's a ton more photographs in my phone that I actually did already upload or stick in my computer and have worked with and have used. And I always print out my, I do some, often enough, a couple of times a month, I do a bit of personal memoir writing for myself, where I incorporate a lot of photographs as well of selected items and bits and pieces. And we did a lot of revisiting of areas that we used to know and that we were really fond of, that I'm still very fond of. So there's reclaiming going on of new areas, that like this chapel with all these weird tombs sitting around it. That was a really new place. I'd only ever really heard the name of the village. And I seem to recall that being in, when I used to live there, we used to take the school bus in the morning at 7 o'clock. We used to be picked up by the school bus in all those different villages and going all together, off to the high school that we were at. And I seem to recall that there were kids from that other village, the village of the actual church with the tombs. It is a really unusual configuration, that church and chapel with there's an actual normal graveyard sitting right next to it, and sort of the church, or yeah, I don't know what to call it. It's too small for a church and too big for a chapel, really. Sitting on the one side, and there's a path going in between the chapel and the graveyard that's still in use. Very normal, ordinary Catholic graveyard. And in between, there's a patch of rock that has all these hollowed out tombs. I shouldn't describe too much because now it won't even be interesting to look at the videos anymore. Anyway, that was a new spot, and there were a couple of other places like that we visited. There was a dolmen, actually, like a passage tomb kind of a setup that I collected dirt at as well. So there's my whole dirt collecting operation seems to be another way of reconnecting with different places. And even though I find it rather, scary, and sometimes there's nothing really to be scared of, so far what I've done is, I've shown this already a couple of times, I've made sets of little flasks, like these little bottles that look like so. This is one of the first ones that I made that contains graveyard dirt or some other type of special dirt from a special location, mixed in with a couple of other ingredients and some essential oils. And this has a very definite vibrational nature, which I'm really interested in. And I have a box full of those by now, 15 different types and 3 more to go that I collected in the past couple of weeks. So it tends to be like 2/3 graveyard, or less than that actually. Can I remember the numbers at this point? Although maybe I've got them in my journal. Should be in here, because I did do some writing out of these things. Well, maybe it's in here. I also did, this is my past lives notebook, where I jot down anything that has to do with my past lives impressions. And there's a lot of soul retrieval type things going on in here, and trying to investigate things that have to do with that. I have to make one more note in here. Oh yes, 7 out of 17 by then, and by now it would be 8 out of 18 are actually graveyard dirt. The others are from other interesting and or special locations, like this chapel where I lost my phone. I picked up some dirt inside the chapel as well as out at the threshold on the outside. The thing is, I'm kind of stressed out about it being as clean as possible, and that's a bit of a challenge in here in the Netherlands, anywhere which isn't a graveyard, okay? Because graveyards don't allow, generally people don't go into graveyards with dogs. That's one thing I tend to get a bit nasty about. And of course there is next to no traffic in there either. So people don't drive around with cars or even bikes or motorbikes in graveyards in this country. Anyway, it's all, it's all meant for pedestrians without dogs. So that, and the combination with it being a consecrated kind of ground, will make for a really clean type of dirt that you can actually, use decently, I feel, with essential oils and all the rest of it. And I make these to be all the same kinds of ingredients. So I will have 18 by now, where they all have the same ingredients apart for the dirt. So the dirt is different. So hence the vibrational, impression that you get from the whole, from each one is really, there's a definite difference between them. And so that's really interesting to me. Recently, we visited a couple more sites like this, and I'm trying to think. I went ahead and picked up some graveyard dirt at the other graveyard in my town here, which has a really pretty old brick tower sitting on it, which is used to be part of a large church building, I think. I'm not even completely sure about that. I will have to also research that for myself. And I dug up some dirt at the foot of this tower, which sits in the middle of this, or yeah, slightly off to one side in the middle of the graveyard. And I've been interested in getting different types of, it's funny, I am sort of trying to feel when it is okay to pick up dirt or not, when and where. For example, in this graveyard that I'm mentioning right now with the tower, there's a couple of really beautiful trees. There's one huge black beech tree sitting there. And the interesting thing about that is that it's visually really pretty. I still intend to do a vlog there at some point. I had done a vlog at some point, except it was spoilt a bit because people did some kind of a noisy building activity in the close neighborhood. So I couldn't post that. I didn't feel like it was doing it all justice. But I did pay attention to the type of organization within the area, within the place, the setup of the actual graveyard itself, and looking at things and how they order things. There's like a little piece of a field that is surrounded by little yew hedges that is for ashes, for cremated remains. And there's, areas that are just plain graves for people that actually have somebody to look after them with, the ordinary Catholic approach with little lights and candles in the winter time, especially in autumn and Halloween time. I always find that really comforting to look at, and lots of flowers and decoration and crosses and things like that. And then in the middle, close to this black beech tree, is a separate sort of triangle enclosure with a little fence, like an old school Victorian era fence around it in a triangle with, I think, 8 tombs that are Protestant. So the vibration of that area, even though it looks really pretty, compared to the rest of the graveyard, it feels really cold. And I was interested in that. I was trying to film things and it didn't work, so I will have to wait for things to change. I'm hoping maybe in autumn or winter it will be a bit quieter over there and I'll be able to do a vlog and just a 1 minute, just a 1 minute 360 thing over there. And we will, you'll be able to look at it for yourself. But there's a striking difference in vibration. And I visited another Protestant graveyard in another village not too far from here, where there's a couple of, just sitting there, a couple of Catholic tombs to the one side, and this grave of a Jewish boy that I also collected some dirt from, not from his patch, but from the hedge in between. I'm really careful as to where I collect my dirt, really. And the rest of the graveyard is Protestant, and the vibration was fine. So there's something going on about either that particular family lying there, they're all related, lying next to that black beech tree, or, which I probably feel is the case, so maybe there could be some healing work done there. I don't know. I would have to, learn more about those people maybe. Or there is certainly a case of there being a conflict between them in terms of religion in the days between when they were alive, between those people, that clan of people and the Catholic people around them, that kind of a thing. I wouldn't be surprised if that was certainly part of the whole vibe thing. So I'm seeing already way over half an hour in, so that should be enough of that. I do have a lot more to talk about in terms of I sort of revamped my phone. I bought a different booklet to stick my phone in because the other one was really worn anyway, because it gets used a lot. So, and I fantasized some contraption like so, you know, it's like a little, it looks huge. It isn't. It's like the size of my hand, like this. Like a little cushion sitting on a massive ribbon, like so, with beads on it, like that, hanging onto this, and the whole phone, it has a peacock motif with peacock tail eyes like that all over it. So it's so striking. I cannot do this again, you know. I cannot make myself forget this this huge, massive. The only other more striking way to, you know, make sure I don't forget is to put lights on it, to put some LED contraption that it goes blink blink at me the whole time. I was being hysterical, which is understandable, all things considered. I felt like, I actually even felt like I betrayed myself in a fundamental way, you know, by managing to just leave my phone out there. And I needed to. I'm such a goon. Stupid. Anyway, this is all sorted. I am glad I'm back out here. I've got my, you know, my whole operation, my whole mojo put back together again. I am much more aware of why I need it. My mojo, my phone and my photos and my different aspects of different parts of the world that all sit in their proper places, and they're all really part of me, of my life in a way. So other than that, the only thing I do want to report at this point, and maybe I will make a separate video because that was originally also the plan, we did another house spirit spread. This time my husband did it, and it exploded in our faces. So I will go ahead and record that separately now. It's all in here, and I just have to pull out the cards again and show you what it was like. And it just goes to show that that spread may look harmless, but it isn't really. So hence the intel. Okay. Thank you so much for hanging on, for, you know, for this chatty business here. Today's Monday. I may upload this tomorrow because of, you know, once a day vlogging business, ideally. And then the house spirit thing will come on Wednesday, so on and so forth. Thank you for being here, you guys. I love you to pieces. And I will be seeing you ASAP. Okay? See you then. Bye-bye for now.